At the Teal Foundation, we work to inspire more young people to get into entrepreneurship and also people of all ages to think more broadly and harder about sort of big problems and and what they can do to work on sort of these hard issues, from radical science to radical human rights.
I'm 26 years old, as I guess that might be relevant for the conversation. I'm originally from Vancouver, but I went to school in Waterloo, Ontario. I went to the University of Waterloo, and I worked on my startup when I was actually in my final year of engineering there. I worked on it for about 2 years. The Pebble idea really came about because I wanted it. It was a product that I wanted, and I went out and started working on the tiny pieces, built my first prototype by soldering together cell phone parts.
How much did you guys raise on Kickstarter?
We raised $10 million on Kickstarter.
It's incredible.
And Matt's one of our backers, as I'm sure there's quite a few people out here as well. And Cameron.
Yep.
Ernestine? Yeah.
Definitely one of the backers. We started working on Lockatron also as I was finishing up school. My co-founder Paul has sort of this hardware background, and I had a background with software. With relation to sort of talking with younger entrepreneurs, I studied things completely different than what I work on a daily basis.
My first investment was in 2 young entrepreneurs from Stanford. I also have an interest in public service, so I'm co-authoring a book with a professor at Stanford, Thomas Ehrlich, titled What You Can Do for Your Country. And finally, a shout out to all the students in the room. Pulled an all-nighter yesterday studying for midterms because I'm also finishing my degree at Stanford.
My name is Matt Mullenweg. After the introductions, I am running low on wine. I'm sure you guys are as well, so we'll keep it short.
Starting a company in school, I think, is one of the greatest times to actually start a company and do a startup, because you don't realize how good it is until you leave.
What did you study, Matt?
I don't even remember. Political science.
So moderating comment forums? Or?
Political science is actually far more useful for running an open source project than computer science. I think it's one of those things where they say, youth is wasted on the young. I think that school is wasted on people currently in school. And I really miss it.
From Paul Graham, who's a great startup writer as well, is some of the tips to make a good company is make something people want, and then the second one is don't let your company die. And if you can do if you can do both of those things, you have a successful company almost by definition.
What I would do is I would read as much as possible. It's just as many books on management, Peter Drucker, just whatever I could get my hands on. Because especially as a young entrepreneur, you're kind of scared at any moment. People will figure out you don't actually know what you're doing. So you're just trying to stay ahead of that curve.
We work as hard as we can to alleviate those, but at the end of the day, you're going to have people who call you and they're standing outside their door and they can't get in. And that is the truth of it. And we keep on working and ways to make that better and better and better. And that is the core of our product. So I'd much rather fix that problem than someone saying, gosh, I wish that I could change the color of the app to green or something. Say, well, maybe we'll shelve that for a while and keep on making this core experience better and better and better.
I love green.
Sorry, Matt, it's blue.
I think it's good to actually ignore user feedback for, I would say, the first couple of stages of the startup. Obviously, stay in business.
Did you guys have a public bug tracker in the beginning?
Each of us would feel the pain of our users in our inbox. Like you could tell by the unread messages when you wake up in the morning how much your product sucks that day. And you make it better, you see it go down. You make it worse, you see it go up. That feedback loop is amazing.
Physical pizza buttons where you press the button and a pizza shows up. And that's
a great idea.
That's the simplest way to explain it. Yeah,
Taco
Copter. Yeah.
The Taco Copter.
So ours was similar. At the time when we had maybe 200 grand in the bank, I spent half of it, like 100 grand, on Dell servers. The Dell part isn't the punchline. It was like 8 servers, and we outgrew it in months. And so that was, you know, a problem. And
You didn't use Heroku? No?
it didn't exist. I feel like the old man here. We walked uphill to get to our servers. Number 2 was not investing in Logitron when we hung out in Crossroads. Number 2 mistake.
It was actually a week before demo day in YC when we decided to switch to hardware.
Building it?
Yeah, do it.
Building it? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good step. Build the minimum viable product. Build the least amount of product that you could show to someone and that they would use, you know, as the product. If you can build that, you can get feedback. You can even try selling it. You know, it's a pretty radical concept, but people will buy pretty much whatever you make. And I mean that in the best way. I mean that what you're building, if it has value in their life, they'll pay money for it, and you can use that to help fund, you know, your work.
It's far more important to listen to your own users and to iterate on your own vision of what's coming than it is to respond to competition. Particularly because often the amount of press something receives is not correlated with its usage.
Impulse was our first watch. It was a watch that worked with a phone called BlackBerry. It was these phones that they had keyboards on the bottom.
When WordPress started, I was 19, but I found it was actually a really great filter. So if someone doesn't take you seriously, even if your idea is good when you're young, they're probably making all sorts of other nonsensical filters, and so you probably don't want to work with them. So I didn't see it as a bad thing at all. I got most frustrated in like Best Buy, like when I was trying to buy a camera and now the associates would pay attention to me. Like those sorts of things were far more frustrating than when I actually got to San Francisco, and I was able to raise like $1 million before I was old enough to drink. And that was pretty cool. You go to mixers, you're now 21. I actually lost one of the checks. That was a bummer. So one of our investors wrote a physical check for, I think, $400,000. The most money I've ever seen in my entire life. I lost it.
He never asked why you hadn't cashed the check?
No. But I don't know. I eventually found it, again, absent-minded. Like I was flying back to Houston for Thanksgiving, and I was opening a book that I hadn't read in a while, and I'd used it as a bookmark. World's most expensive bookmark, right? And it like fell into my lap on the plane, and I like yelped. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so like first thing I did when I landed was like go straight to the bank to deposit it. Open source is probably the most important thing. It's as important as our Bill of Rights is to us today.